This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in San Diego County today. We are joined by Mark Kersey. He is a member of the San Diego City Council, and the ballot is a busy one in San Diego City and County for that matter. There are several measures on the San Diego ballot that are specific to the city, A through N. Mm-hmm. One of them deals with marijuana. Let's talk about N. What would Measure N do?
Well, as you know, there's Prop 64 on a statewide ballot that would legalize recreational marijuana. And what we've decided to do in the city is put Measure N on the ballot that would provide, if Prop 64 passes, which it looks like it will,
right, then
there would be a gross receipts tax on marijuana sales within the city. And the idea there is it would offset some of the costs that are going to have to be picked up by the city. Law enforcement, code enforcement, legal services, fire rescue, things like that.
Is there a distinction made for marijuana purchased for recreational use versus medical use?
Yeah, there is. And so that's one of the things that we changed in committee was exempting medicinal marijuana sales from the gross receipts tax, just like they are exempted from the state excise tax as well.
So let's talk about the author of this measure. I'm talking to him.
That's right.
And so I want to get a sense as to how you came to be the author of this, because you know the issues surrounding cannabis and marijuana, it creates strange bedfellows, and people on the far right looking for legalization, people on the far left looking for legalization, people aren't sure what to do about taxation.
Right.
So talk to me about that.
Well, I serve on the board of the League of California Cities,
of course,
representing San Diego, and so this was something that was discussed at the League of Cities pretty extensively as it went through the various iterations of what became Prop 64.
Sure.
And so a lot of cities are looking at how do we deal with this. And so this is when the issue first came to my attention. And we've dealt with medicinal marijuana dispensaries trying to shut down the illegal ones for years.
So just for our viewers statewide, we do have medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of San Diego.
That's right, we do.
Are they licensed? Because we just had a regulatory scheme passed statewide. What can you tell us about those?
That's right. So we have a regulatory process that they have to go through in the city. It's fairly restrictive because our constituents didn't want them just sprouting up everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so I believe there's something like 8 or 9 that are actively open right now. I think there's 14 that have permits to open. Okay. But they're pretty restricted.
And what have you seen with regard to activity around those dispensaries? I mean, I joke. I walked into one once with my daughter and got recognized, but that's a whole other conversation. But what's your sense of the dispensaries? The one I went into seemed very safe, but there's a sense some create an element.
Yeah, I think it depends, right? I think it depends in large measure on the operator, whether they're one of the licensed legal ones versus an illicit one. I think there's a lot of different factors at play. And if Prop 64 passes, I think you're going to see some kind of innovative financing that has to be developed.
Let's talk about that, because you would know. I mean, I recently interviewed both George Runner and Fiona Ma. They're both on the Board of Equalization. Diane Harkey's a counterpart who represents this community. They told me a story that a medical marijuana dispensary, licensed, wanted to pay their sales tax. Problem was, you can't deposit medical marijuana money into a bank because the feds don't allow it.
Right. They
showed up at the Board of Equalization in Sacramento with over $200,000 in cash.
Right.
Sir, what is San Diego going to do under that scenario? If all of a sudden we have recreational marijuana, medical marijuana, you're collecting gross receipts.
Right.
What does that look like?
I think it's going to be a statewide issue, and I think you're going to have to see something develop that's an alternative to how people would typically deposit money today, right? And in Colorado, it's still an all-cash business, and that's created some problems for people. I think that here, because California is such a much larger market, that I think something's going to happen. And if I could, I'd just like to point out that if Measure N passes, San Diego would join other big cities in the state that have done something similar with regards to taxation of marijuana in their city. Los Angeles, most of the other big cities, San Jose, have done it. And probably will do it because of the impacts to the cities.
What about the other cities in this county? 17 total. Where are they on this issue? Because look, San Diego, if you look at a map, it curves and twists, and all the sister cities are kind of in between and next door. And so how does that play out?
I think we'll have to wait and see. I mean, some cities have said, look, no way this is ever going to be allowed in our cities in terms of having dispensaries, like retail places where you can buy recreational marijuana. I think the mayor of Poway has gone on record saying that, and some others. But I think it'll vary from city to city.
I'm glad you brought that up because, as I'm sure you know, the city of Riverside a few years ago outlawed all medical marijuana dispensaries as a matter of land use. That case went to the California Supreme Court, and on a 7-0 decision, the Supreme Court said Riverside can do that as a matter of land use, despite Prop 215. Let's presume 64 passes, whether N passes or not. 64 passes. It becomes an issue. You know, where do you allow recreational marijuana shops to pop up? Are they different than medical marijuana shops? Can they be unified? That will be a land use question, no?
That will be a question for the city council to take up. And I would say that based on the past discussions we've had on land use with medicinal, I don't see there being the sentiment of a majority of the council to outright ban them. I could see there being a sentiment to essentially allow the ones doing medicinal to just go ahead and do recreational.
I understand.
I could see that, but that'll be a discussion that the council has to take up.
It's undeniable that when someone ingests cannabis, there's an intoxicating effect. One can say that an intoxicating effect is not as dangerous as alcohol. I'm not sure, but my gut tells me that folks that use marijuana will get on the road. San Diego has its own police department. Where are you on that? I mean, I know we're veering a bit off end, but I think it's important. You kind of said it, though, that part of it's to mitigate impacts. But where are you on that issue?
This is actually one of the reasons I don't support Prop 64. I think there's going to be all kinds of consequences like that. But given that it's polling at 60%, it seems likely it's going to pass. And so that's why I think it's prudent for cities to take this course of action. I think that when you look at what's set up in the state measure, the Prop 64, there is money for CHP to do some research on how to determine levels of intoxication in drivers, because it's not as straightforward as it is with alcohol. But at the city level, our police department is going to need resources, and we're just frankly probably not going to get very much, if anything, out of that statewide tax measure. So that's why having the local resources so that we're not cutting our road repair budget to pay for the impacts of recreational marijuana.
So let's go back to N. N passes, we'll presume. Where does the money go? Is there a formula, Mr. Author?
So it'll go into the city's general fund, which pays for things like police services, fire rescue services, code enforcement, and all the big things that the city pays for come out of the general fund. The money will get deposited in there, and then the council is going to have the ability to allocate it based on where the biggest needs are as a result of these impacts.
Did you consider when drafting that it would be dedicated, or you thought it best that it go into general fund?
We thought about that. The problem is that we don't know exactly where we're going to need those resources, right? So we don't want to say we're going to put 100% into PD or 100% into fire rescue, or what the percentage breakdown should be. We don't really know what those impacts are going to look like.
I got to ask you about Measure N being the last measure on the San Diego City ballot, I think. I mean, it's definitely the last measure. You know, 64 is way up top and Measure N's at the bottom. Are you trying to talk to your constituents, the city constituents, don't forget to go to the measures and including Measure N because we're going to need this?
You know, we've been doing a little bit of outreach. I mean, it's one of those things that I think your dedicated voters are going to go through, and they're going to vote on things that they want. And, you know, the whole topic of marijuana legalization is you know, kind of unique and charged enough that I think people will be able to pull those out. When you look at the June ballot, Prop H, which I ran, which is the infrastructure measure Rebuild San Diego, and then Measure I, which was the minimum wage referendum, those actually got pretty good turnout. So even though they were at the bottom of the list, plenty of people still showed up and voted on those. So we want people to go through the whole ballot, as tough as that's going to be.
His name is Mark Kersey. He is a councilman in the city of San Diego. He's the author of Measure N, in which he supports. That will be on the November 8th ballot in the city of San Diego. I'm Brad Pomerance, Local Edition.